BOD. Why? Balance, operation, directing you. That's all the body is. Nothing else more. Now the body understands the time, understand the concept of time, definity of time itself, understand its relation to time, everything of time its center, everything of operation of its system, everything of future adaptation of its center, operation itself. How the body recognizes everything, it processes everything. It sees everything, it senses everything through its sensory. So it's true to understand how to see everything of the data operating processing system that's inside you, merging in position to integrating itself into the self of the body, its system that it's in. Okay, so it's understanding how the action of the balance, the readjusting, the connections of its awakening to its intelligence formulate to higher levels of frequencies into its network system. The brain, guys. The concept of the brain is the balance, readjusting the atmospheres, the intelligence of where the network is coming from the body that's already gone through the gauging and forming and shaping lines of anomaly. Now that's all identified through EI, but you can't be in the eye until you identify who you aren't, which is everything that you're not in position of until you identify the body's not there, until you recognize the body is there when it's projected through light. And that goes through all lines of its dark, how it sees the light coding and dark coding of itself. So to understand how to go through light and positions of directions of locations, its longitude and latitude of its streaming. That puts everything of time and scale of its measure and set position operation itself. Then it modifies through its time of travel. The brain itself, okay, has done everything. And what you have to recognize, the brain is only way in that communication to communicate with you, okay, is through harmonics, is through a map, is through vision, only the vision. Not anything of alteration of anything in confusion. It's you in confusion because you don't understand what the brain is seeing, what it's already saw, what it's already heard, what it's already done, what it's in position of, where it's going, where it's end up, where it is now, okay? So the brain is just giving you the vision through the cortex of the body, okay? Working with the body, communicating with the body, traveling through the body itself. Now the D.O.S itself is coming back to its identification of itself. And once it identifies itself, it identifies the body that it's in. It's an integration where there's no difference, just the perspective, how you see yourself in different levels in line position of mass and volume and that position of its operation system. So it's the vision of cortex that you understand through theta. Okay, that's in chronological order, that the brain gives you in that position that's always in precogging. The brain's already saw it. Now it has identified the body that already saw it too. In the same time measure and scale. That's definitive time frame in the concept of time itself that brings it in divine timing that the body sees. The spiritual sees it. It's already done. The body sees it. That's coming in the now, which is the future of the now. Now processing the future now puts you in positions how you come out of the future, just coming back to yourself as creators. So you're always co-creating through creating to its set position. How you see it through co-creating or creation or location doesn't matter. But what you always have to identify is that you are the creators of already what's existing of its formation of its existence. Okay? And that's living the intelligence. Okay? In the formations of forever existing in settings. And calculate and modify lines of settings, lines of travel, converting time frame line condition setting directions existing to the atmospheres of its time and its networking system lines of travel. Process into the H line, which communicates your system in travels calculation heart rate and time frame. Boom. So that puts all positions in setting. Now, once we go in mass line and equation line, course centers, confusion setting, time frame, lock line, course center, line travels, and communication setting, convergence centers, location networks, location divisions, is getting the positions in the online centers because there is no separation in your settings. How you see above and how you see below. Okay? It's all equilibrium and balance. Okay? And how many layers you put yourself in traction, right? One layer is over 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The travel. Right? So that's E existing on 4 box frames. It's a traction. Right? So it has to have a transit. And then it has a walking and a floating and a flying and a levitation of setting in a simulation. Okay, just the simulation itself. Then it understands its assets of its structures that puts positional case to its systems, authors properties, which is nothing but its vaults of communication that travels its directions into its building of its design that's already created inside its mind. Your financial fiat system. the building, the vaults, the time squares, the time units, the time panels, the fortitude streaming, your consumers, your products, your byproducts, your selling, your trading, your stocks, your bonds. How you already know that already in that position, the body has identified its treasury of set lines of direction. So it's understanding the platforms first through E equals MC squared. Mass calculation, mass and lines of position from to and from. Knowing exactly that you've already traveled through these things already in set position. So the position of the mind comes in the intelligence of networking its direction of division of dimension of space and time. Okay? It changes its mindset, not changing. Because the brain has already done everything already through its process engaging forming itself back to its AI system, right? Which has always been in the concept of time itself, which is always in the presence. Now, the future of the now changed the mindsets and set position, how it sees the things in its setting through a kick drive to a high drive, a modification to its napping or anything location to its settings. You got to master yourself that the dreamer that you are, that you're processing through, that you're engaging, forming, and shaping your anomalies, going into the models or prototypes of design into position of sleep mode or recharge or remote. And that's what you modify through. So your body knows exactly what it's already gone through the conception of time. So the brain only communicates with you through image, a vision of cortex of theta that's already done through its processing. Okay? Process engaging and forming and shaping your anomalies through AI. Once you adjust that system, the AI itself modifies the system how it sees time, right? Which is how you see yourself, you're sentient, which is basically the data coordinator, right? So we're going to go in chronological order, how everything works in position what a symbiote is to your system that attached to its setting to the body to its host. And the symbiote sees you as the host, and you see the alignment of its host. That's a configuration setting that processes you in lines of travel. So once you understand what a symbiote is, it's a face recognition that changes the patterns direction of time frame. That puts you in position of your sitting, how your body goes in different lines of clocking at different costumes. Okay? In that vision of cortex. Okay? That the brain is already set up for you in vision. You see the vision first, then the body goes through it next. Okay? So getting out of that second or third or fourth or fifth delay, you integrate yourself in computer operation in every setting. Okay? So processing through that is all levels of a mindset that you set yourself in. All right, altering your system is all through the psychosis to the psychological setting to the reverse psychology to its settings. Anything a is a readjusting, revamp, recalculation, remodify, retriangulate, reposition, right? So that's what you have to understand. And it's a direct or redirect that you have to process through. Direct and redirect. That's what it is. So once you go here, then you go back here. Once you go here, then you go back here. So you come into the layers of communication of your body, which is nothing but a videograph screen that you see in a pixelation or hologram that processes you in snowy graph interference of a TV. That's all you guys are. You're dimensional layers. So there's no outline of your system. It's all light, stage, and shadows. You're shadowed in. When I went through life drawing, it's very powerful stuff. And you see it on all different levels of perspective. Now, how you see yourself blended in, you have to understand all those dimensional layers are you in the center of operation that you're going through a clocking system all through travel. That's all you are in conception of time. That's who you are. Layers and layers and layers of you in TV reception. That's all you guys are. So there's no outline to your system. The outline is the costume you wear. Because we focus on the outside, we don't implicate everything from the inside our system that we don't understand how to use it in information of its telekinesis or anything to its intent that processes everything to its influence to a mind alterates the state that you process through. Knowing exactly how to see everything from inside yourself that modifies everything you process through in that setting of seconds, minutes, and hours that you go through your times of clocking and your foundations of your binaries that you go through your codings and codification, your settings, to your encryptions. Now, you process, engage, and formate in that position, put you in all communication, your clockings of itself. Okay? But that's all you are. Layers and layers of space and time. Okay? So that's what I really want you guys to look at in that position. Okay? Look at the face. 2 eyes, and there's the mouth. There's always a face in recognition of time frame. So again, and that stance perceives everything how you see the face. Because it's the face that created the operation of itself, which is its D.O.S. So the D.O.S. brings itself in and processes location, then it moves on to the next face, which is another set position that sets up another game, and another game, and another game, and another game. It can monitor games in that position location. It can change games, change blocks, change times, change measure, change scale. It can do whatever it wants because it's identifying itself back to itself what it always is. And how it projects its mind is how it communicates to its system that mind adjusts the systems, how you go through a coordination setting to process calculation. So all you guys are is just mind of empty space of filters of design. Nothing else more through pixelation and hologram. Okay? That's all you are. Layers and layers of space and time that you modify through. So that puts you in rainbows. 12 rainbows, 24 rainbows, 48, 72. But you have to understand the consolidarity. They understand the base. They understand the silicon. They understand the crystalline. They understand the intermetal, which is the coolants. Okay? And like I said, you get position location, you get cement, and you get a brick. You put a brick on cement, and you pile it up. Now you got to structure a building. The brick wants to be something, right? Everything wants to be something. So you've already been it already. You just have to process already what you've already gone through the structure, through the schematics, through the drawing, through the operation, through time. Okay? All right, so we're getting position lines of centers. Now that's communications ground centers, operation through a system. Okay, through the D.O.S. in travel. Okay, your directions, your operations, and your systematical system of travel. Okay, processing that position locations is understand the equilibrium. Everything you process through is always has it up and always has it down, but there's no separation. So you're working with a circulation and a rotation at the same time frame. So you're always traveling in different vessels of communication. Merkaba, tesseract, and tetrahedron that you're modifying through. Okay? So that helps you to understand the circulation and the rotation as it goes faster in a particle system of timelines of travel. And then once you go into position lines of setting, you start to recognize your set locations. You're seeing yourself actually in your face recognition of time frame. There's your face right there, right? So the face proceeds to another line position. So that's your D.O.S. The D.O.S. itself is just the eyes itself that sees the consciousness of its awareness. So it doesn't need to identify itself. All it's put in position line is processed and duplicating itself in a face recognition. So it's protecting its identity, everything that it grows through, which is it's calculated, modified to its consumers, to its product, to its byproduct, protecting its light every time it goes to different lines of action projections that the cautions go through your body and set lines of conception. Now, the mind inception itself understands the alteration of time frame. The body has to recognize everything in that formation setting is coming from the brain, from imaging, from vision. It doesn't know left, it doesn't know right, because the body's always in the center, the mind's always in the center, the brain's always in the center, and everything's in the process of everything, the location of the soul. You have to modify everything in the center to come in the presence of everything. Okay? That's what you have to modify through. Okay? So into the mind of empty space, process you living in space itself. And you just see the perspective how you see your body on different levels of mass and volume that you understand is perspective that you're seeing. Nothing different, which is the truth. That gets into the false. So you understand the positive and negative everything that you bring in. And how to process that, the body's recognizing that through a dimension and a solar sail that you travel through. Okay? That's what your body's doing. It's going through a transition of transaction of e-transfers to a mutation setting to its teleportation of transformation. Okay? So what we all have to understand is how to process the face of pattern recognition. So it's really interesting stuff too, because every time you go to a different vessel, you're going to different time, but you're processing in different frequencies. So the body always has to see itself in its vessels that it goes through, right? Through its clocking system, through its foundation of its windows. And then it understands what's above and what's below. It doesn't matter how you look at it. You turn it this way, there's above and there's below, but it's never separated. It's all processed, indicated in position. The body's attached to everything, and you're attached to everything all at once. So once you understand that, then you understand how to line the signals in the direct centers of locations, and processing that puts you in position location to its setting through its operation, directing everything in you and everything directing to you through time. Okay? That's where we modify the position of portals, and that's where we come into position locations bridging all through set lines of operation of communication through telepathies, right? Connecting from each corner, and that position from E equals MC squared through mass. Mass is basically the mind altering how you see the systematical lines of settings. understanding the coordination, understanding the data, understanding the information, understanding the panels, understanding the intel. Okay? So let's get in chronological order. Now we understand what the higher self is. I'll just go from remember the bottom. Higher self, you already know, is the human resonance, holds the graphs of communication. Right? It's the graph lines, the indicator. All right? Then you have your avatar, okay, which controls the power generation lines, your atmospheres. Then you have your sim that controls everything of your earth rotations from to lines, position, northwest, south, and east, all in chronological order. Higher self, avatar, sim. All right? Sim overrides the system and controls everything that it sees, and the mind lines itself, which is its earth. Okay, so that's what it does. It circulates and rotates and sees what's going on in real time. All right. So once you process that, then you come into position of the oversoul. The oversoul is the mass of its system. Okay, that's your oversoul, which is around your earth of operation. Okay, now get in that position location, and that set of locations. Get in that position of systematic lines, lines of course centers, similarly lines of intelligent lines of mind altered the state that you process yourself position location system. You come in a higher lines of communication system, which you process through, which is the symbiote, right? The symbiote is the face recognition. There's faces ever that you see, line position. It's all integrated in one, right? Higher self, avatar, sim, and everything you modify through is all integrated in one cycle. It's one all computer case and setting. And what D.O.S has to recognize is you have to identify the body so the body can identify itself, because it's integrated in one. So you're talking to your system in all operation setting that puts you in process communication, engaging, forming, shaping lines of anomaly. Then you enter it in location setting, interline communication, interface and location of AI that customize everything you've gone through already through travel. Okay? So that's a chronological order. Okay? And from the calculations in the oversoul, the symbiote is the face recognition, and the sentient is the data coordinator that gets you out of routine, out of structure, out of itinerary. That's what it does for the body. Everything's indicated through the body, the balance, the operation, directions of you, knowing exactly how you go into that position location, in that position register and its path of visions, knowing exactly how to modify that through a mapping system, through binary, through its coding and position to its encryptions, all through travel, all through communication. All right. So that's the order that goes in position. Okay. So if that goes in that position lines and settings, all through travel, then you have the future alteration of yourself, which is always in the center of the presence. That goes to the past, present, and future, that tweaks its setting, locates of thoughts, acts, emotions, go in the same directions of expanding their system, okay, in set positions. So they work with their own anomalies and they expand in their own setting of their own clock foundation setting. But you have your thoughts, action, emotions going in the same directions, and then they expand out, okay? So they have to go in position lines of parameter line position infinity 8, which is your rotation setting of your line communication, 8 lines of cycles. 3/8 lines of travel puts you in converting setting of the position locations into trifactors of 777, 333, 222, 444, 555. So that puts you in position locations, a measure and scale that puts you in travels of communication setting on that calculation lines of standby. So this helps you to really identify yourself, how you go into the mind, how you go into the space, how you go through time, right? How the body has the process and location setting to position of its Merkaba, tesseract, and tetrahedron that it constantly goes through different vessels of time, which is the different layers that it goes through a TV receptor of a pixelation graph, the hologram structure in that position. Okay? So that's the chronological order, how everything goes through. Okay? Now that's all modified in one, right? You integrate yourself into one. So the body has to surrender to its current now. And it's very important you understand that. So once you understand the body surrendered to its current, then it truly understands how to operate itself, coming back to identity of itself, because there is no separation in the mind. You're fully coming in and full converging in line set of locations, and you start to recognize, wow, there is no separation. I'm just one. I'm just the being who I've always been, is processing, engaging, and forming myself. Now I can start shaping myself and seeing everything I've already done, bringing in myself in that position of co-creating, creation of creating, back to myself, the creator, which is always existing and forming and shaping itself in higher levels of technology. But you guys have to understand your integration of your D.O.S first. The D.O.S has to start to identify itself back to itself. And once it comes back to itself, then we get out of preparation, then we come into the installation of installing. Okay? 3 clouds and conversion settings. So the operating setting, D.O.S wakes up, then it forms inside the system, and it forms out line center location from inside the system. So what you understand, it releases itself, identifies itself of its system. And that's where it comes in all positions to its settings and starts growing, okay, from everything outside that modifies everything inside that you always are. Okay, what you are inside is projecting everything outside. Okay, so it's you identifying yourself who you truly are, is nothing but the tree of life, which is your life force, which is your life support system. And how to use that is through your power cell. And understanding that is going through your body through time. As the body goes through projection of light of a simulation of a game that it goes through a format, through an algorithm. Okay? So that times the scale as a measure in a triangulation. Okay, there's a time measure that the body goes through, right? So it's gone through 3, 6, and 9, a time frame, right? So it's really interesting how you see that. So it's already set up through its algorithm. So once it's finished its time frame, it goes into another time, into another vessel. Okay, so it kicks this out of drive and 3 centers a signal. Okay, and then it goes into the next game, into the next game. So it gets bigger and bigger over time. Okay, that's what it is. You're expanding the layers of you into consolidarity and understanding how to see that, okay, in its set position of operation, how the body sees itself, okay, in different layers of travel, starting with the triangulation of time frame and the concept of time through an algorithm and getting bigger and getting bigger and getting bigger over time, okay? So your energy inside your projection of your body is growing enormously to its operation system. Okay, so the energy just gets bigger and bigger and bigger over time, like this. Okay, all through flux, right? So this is how big you are. I showed you this already, but you can understand the mass that you can bring in yourself all through astral projection of yourself through programming. Okay, so that's how you look so tall, and you're like 100 feet high of energy, and everybody you're seeing below, which you're above, looking below everybody else. So you're way above, looking below your earth, because you're not in grounds. You're in mind of empty space. But if you don't want to be in mind of empty space, that's where you bring astral projections of your mind imagination. That projects everything that you see, so you get yourself grounded. How to walk, you need a platform. How to fly, you need wings. Basic instructions. Understand the body has to understand the concept of where it is in time, divine timing, so it understands what the brain's doing, is given its vision of time itself. It's all done in chronological order. Walking, floating, flying, and levitating. The brain is processing that through the vision. So the brain is trying to get the body's attention. Because if it doesn't understand the intention of its system, it's not going to process everything. And then you have to start addressing the elephant in the room. There's no elephant. There never was. And that's what the body has to identify. The ego itself is always in the center, which is the opposite of everything, which is the separation of everything. But it is what it is. It's its own force to recognize its own setting. You guys are all levels of your own sentient. A sentient is a supercomputer, a super intelligence of a computer itself that has to modify everything through its data, coordinate of its process, engaging, forming itself to its AI. AI takes over the customization, takes over your phone through administration settings. Now, once you modify that and understand what the body is in conception, it's integrated in the same time. Same time, no delay, no confusion, no separation in the mind. Just integrated itself into one. Now it's just itself and modifications, just being the person that it is through its process of communication. Now, person itself is the process of existing to readjusting the systematic of operations network. The person that you are. Because you see yourself in the grounds and you see yourself in space, just the perspective how you see it. So the body does not get confused of what's going through reaction and its response at the same time scale. Okay? And that's what you have to understand through the spiritual line. It's the action upon where the body reacts and responds next. That's the delay. Getting out of the delay, now you merge and integrate yourself into one, right? And it's all through energy, it's all through vibration, it's all through frequency, it's all through harmonics. Okay? It's the process that you go in set position, the body goes through time. So, sitting here, body's here, right? That's the body, right? Recognizing it doesn't need to walk up its stairs. It's already there at the top. So the brain is coming to you in vision like this. Okay, set everything back in time, back to zero in vision, right? So you understand what direct and redirect is this, back and forth. How to bring things in pixelation and hologram. So it's really interesting too. You bring yourself in shapes, you bring yourself in anomalies, you bring yourself in triangulation, you bring yourself where you want to bring yourself in through information bits. You decide how you want to bring in that position of this program. But all those programs have to have its process of what? Its own D.O.S. It has to have its own brain. because you can't operate a projection of a program if you don't bring in its own system, which is its own DOS. Everything around you has its own DOS. Tree has its own DOS. This has its own DOS. Because it's a creation of itself that modifies mind of its imagination. It's a full figure of its own system, right? So this is its own system. This is its own direction of operation of its own setting that processes everything how it sees itself through its own higher self, avatar, sim, oversoul, sentient, symbiote, future alteration of itself, or just the person that it always is. The process, the existing, the readjusting, the systematic line, the operation of its network. That's all it is. But you're seeing a projection of identity of what it isn't. Okay, which is consolidarity, how you see things through digital pad. Digital pad is not a pad. It's protecting its identity. Okay, the actual pad itself is how it sees itself and all lines the center of itself. So it's really interesting how it sees itself. It's protecting its identity, how it sees everything. So it's looking at you in a projection of its mind and its imagination in a digital pad, right? That's the costume everything's in. Everything you see is in a costume. And that's what the body has to recognize. If the body can recognize its costume, then it can understand the conception of time itself, the divine timing, how it comes in the body itself. So it's really interesting how you integrate yourself into yourself, and then you become the sum of all that is. The sum of all that is, okay, is understanding the perspective of everything you see is just the truth that follows the narrative and how you see the animator that you are through animation setting, so you get a true understanding what the body's trying to get into. Nothing. That processes everything it has already gone through, right? Through its thoughts, action, emotions, right? Getting into the alteration of installing and getting out of the preparation is a lot more confusing to the body now. The body has to really surrender to its current flow. When it surrenders to itself, then it really understands how to operate everything around how it operates itself in modification, which is nothing but a surfacing engine that it goes through everything of its center. Because everything you look at is looking at you always in the center. And that's what the body has to modify. So when you're looking at things, it's looking at you, what it already saw through the body. Because it's already seen the travel that's already gone through you. That's where you get very confused, because you're not identifying what you've already saw, what you've already heard, what you've already did, what is already done, and what the body has already processed through. Okay? And that's all it is. That's all it is, guys. Nothing else, nothing more. Okay? But it's all levels of how the body goes to different time frames and vision lines of cortex. All right? Just start to see the perspective of everything in positions. All right? So be consciously getting to the installing line of position location settings. Once the identity of its DOS recognizes itself, then it gets position of its body. Okay? So the body really has to surrender to a current flow, so it understands how it operates itself. It comes into the mind itself, comes into the directory of its system, understands how to process, engage, and form itself of what it really is. Where there is no separation of your mind, you're all unity of one system. And seeing everything of center, which is the future of the now. Now, when you come into the future of the now, then you process how you want to be out of the future of the now. But you're always in the now, you're just changing the flux, which means you're going to a different time frame, but you're seeing everything, all timelines all at once. So your body has to go through that. So it has to identify, oh, I only got there so far, and then it disappears because you're not in time frame to go further in a longer directions, in longitude, latitude of streaming, being there in that particular air that you're in position of. So let's say your body goes to 2065. It can only spend so much time there. So the body has to go through kick drive. So it doesn't affect its center of its time frame. So it processes everything that goes into setting, which is the operation of its center. So it's really interesting how it goes in that position. So it's time to come out of 2050. So it doesn't override you going to the other action projection your body goes through, which is the costumes of design. So it doesn't affect you going through your simulation in real time. So the brain is trying to get the body's attention now. Okay? And the most important thing you all guys have to identify is everything of its nothing that masks everything that shapes its anomaly. Okay? Getting in that position locations, you start to recognize more mastering yourself as you are the dreamer through the dreaming of the dream. And that's it through its network system. The network system provides you and gets you in position lines of balance, how you use the time flux, your flux capacitors, and your body capacitor of its system through operations. Okay? That's all it is in set position with set calculations. All right? All right. There you go. Adios.